Hello and good morning.
Good morning.
How is everyone? Thank you all for showing up and being who you are on this beautiful, crisp January morning. You know, Nick sent me this missive, not just me, but to other speakers, saying the topics have changed, and it was usually January's beginnings, and this month it's law. And my first thought was, law? And all I could think of was the Isle of Dr. Moreau. What is the law? Men walk on 2 feet. And if you haven't seen that movie, go. And then my mind settled down to what the topic is today, which is the law of oneness. And I'd like to focus on a quote, a meditation by Ralph Waldo Emerson. The world is not the product of a manifold power, but of one will, one mind, and that mind is everywhere active, in each ray of the star, in each wavelet of the pool. And whatever opposes that will is everywhere balked and baffled, because things are made so and not otherwise. All things proceed out of the same spirit, and all things conspire with it. The perception of laws, awakens in the mind a sentiment, which we call the religious sentiment, and which makes our highest happiness, and by it the universe is made safe and habitable. That's a mouthful, isn't it? The law of one advances healing of all our wills. Why? Because in oneness is harmony. In oneness is unity. In oneness, we are brought together to experience the glory of what Aldous Huxley explicates in his book, The Perennial Philosophy, and that is that each of the world's religious traditions share a single, universal truth. Oneness is the embracing belief and behavior of both and, rather than either or. It envelops you and me, and it creates us. There is the elimination of us and them, and it yields we. God and me, God as me, God as we. By it, the universe is made safe and habitable. Now, several years ago, I was invited to speak at the United Nations World Peace Day on Sustainable Peace. It was at the UN Chapel. And what I bore in mind then was this idea of oneness that Emerson puts forth in his poem, because I believe that sustainable peace comes from oneness, the fusion of the divine feminine and the divine masculine that is present in all of us. And this is beyond sexuality or gender. It's not about being gay or straight or bisexual or transgendered or a cross-dresser. Identity and authenticity is the question we all share at one time or another, and finding balance in the divine animus and anima goes to the core of personhood. Oneness calls the question, who am I? And how am I to be seen in the world? And how do I see myself in the world? And how am I to be with great spirit? And when we heal the separated schism of the male and the female in ourselves, we begin to heal the world. The struggle is vanquished, and that yields sustainable peace. The world's ills have patriarchal fingerprints all over it. Of course, matriarchy is not the answer. That's the same thing, simply an inversion of it. And it has the same problematic outcome. Matriarchy and patriarchy both have the perverted dealings of cutting off the other's qualities and reality. And patriarchy renders women and men alike automatons to serve the ever-hungry, capitalistic, cannibalistic, empire-building, community-destroying industrial, prison, and military complexes. As the preamble to Emily Buchwald's Transforming a Rape Culture states, a rape culture is a complex of beliefs that encourages male sexual aggression and supports violence against women. It is a society where violence is seen as sexy and sexuality as violent. In a rape culture, both men and women assume that sexual violence is a fact of life, inevitable as death and taxes. How inured we are when we see the billboards illustrating these beliefs, or when a woman passes by men on the street who make lewd, demeaning comments about the female, or even when men simply cannot resist silently looking at women as an object of their own gratification. How unconscious and common to see infants with pink and blue baby clothes begin to inculcate the schism between boy and girl, male and female. We are legions of witnesses to horrible feats of dualistic daring that flattens the emotions and exhausts our spirit. Any archy, monarchy, oligarchy, patriarchy, or matriarchy is designed to house the power among the few and serve those and not the many. Patriarchy numbs us and makes us pulseless as we watch it wage inhumanity upon mankind, either through Opus Dei derision, pop culture music, human trafficking, or a young couple following the distorted male and female images impressed in their psyches from the beginning of viewing media. We are meant to be programmed to feel impotent in its wake. That is how patriarchy controls and suppresses us. Our collective feminine-masculine division is our world wound that needs healing. It stems from our inner individual selves divorced from oneness. The feminine-masculine divide is not about gender-driven tasks, who does what and who takes out the garbage, who's on top in bed. The healing is about our divine inner essence that moves us to take action on behalf of those in need, on behalf of ourselves, on behalf of our community. The healing emerges from the truly balanced personal interior equanimity as a person, as a human. Not that long ago, I was in the supermarket and a mother and daughter were right nearby, and I could see the girl was looking at me, and I didn't have any makeup on, and I had on a sweatshirt, and she tugs on her mom's clothes. She says, "Mommy, is that a boy or a girl?" And of course I could hear it, and I looked down at the kid, and the mother was horrified. She's like, "Quiet down." So I bent down to the little girl, and I said, "You don't know if I'm a boy or a girl, do you?" She says, "No, what are you?" And I looked at her and I said, "I'm a person." And that was enough for her. It doesn't matter if I'm male or female. I'm a human being. In the words of Andrew Harvey, the divine feminine humanizes. The divine masculine is most masculine when that bows to the creativity of humanity. The woman's wound, the distortion of the feminine, holds the sacred masculine. In other neat words, we need each other for completeness, for wholeness. Within each of us and within the world about us, there is this continued and contained seed of renewal. Let us water that seed, nurture that equilibrium of feminine and masculine energies, the law of oneness. There is no God without goddess. No goddess without God. The moon cannot glisten without the sun. We are here to transcend and include as we move forward. Personally, I've been given ample opportunity to deconstruct and reconstruct, to reinvent myself. And this inward journey I talk of toward union with self, the blending of the anima and the animus, began for me back in the 1970s. I was an original member of the Women's One World Cafe, or the WOW Cafe. It's a women's experimental theater group. It's still in existence today. And at that time, I was not embracing my femaleness. In fact, I was rejecting it. And it was not safe for me to be female, so I felt. And so I was a leather butch about town. And I found my place in the world among a tribe of performance lesbians. And I was part of this New York City underworld, this leather scene, and I was part of this performance scene. And gay sexuality back then was not yet on the multicultural map. It wasn't until years later that Madonna co-opted it and then, made a gajillion dollars off of it, but that's another story. At the Wow Cafe, we workshopped and we performed many original scripts, and one in particular, Cinderella, the Real True Story, by Cheryl Moak. She took this myth and she really turned it on its head. Now, this was during the emerging threat of identity politics. And we lesbians back then were crafting who we were and who we were not in the social fabric of marginalized downtown experimental theater performers. So in this play, Cinderella, there was Cinderella as the blossoming lesbian servant girl, and the king, who was played by Lisa Crone, wanted his spoiled daughter, the princess, me, to marry a suitable man. But none of the suitors pleased the princess, but at the ball, the bedecked and charming Cinderella sweeps the frilly-frocked princess off of her feet. Now, the director of this particular play, Lois Weaver, stunned the entire cast and me as casting me as the princess. It was completely unexpected and a contrary role. And I have to understand, being the butch that I was, I had taught and performed butch training workshops. So to put me in the role of a princess was deconstructing the deconstruction of my identity. And in rehearsal, there I'd be in leather drag, leaning up against the wall, saying my lines like, "Father, Father, how could you want me to go out with this duke?" And everybody in the cast would, just roll their eyes and they'd mumble, "She's never going to get this." And, they were taking bets on whether I could pull it off or not. And it was really doubtful because I was so deeply identified with maleness and I was invested in that image, that I was misogynistic. You see, I thought that men had the power. And I adopted all the negative male traits that had been modeled for me. And I thought that women were foolish and sentimental and only good for gratification. And I rejected my own femaleness to get past what I disdained. Talk about an inner wound. I wanted to be the handsome Cinderella, charming, not the bratty little pesty princess wearing the flowing gowns of tulle and chiffon. And I didn't know how to get into this character. But then it occurred to me that for my femininity, maybe if I thought of myself as a gay man in drag, that's how I could get in the back door. And that is exactly how I got in the back door of my female sexuality. And so I began to find the balance of my brand of male and female self, as artificial as it originally was. So you see, as a butch woman, I embraced the masculine, and I was living under the illusion, the patriarchal warped idea that the feminine, the sensitive, the vulnerable, the gentle was exclusive to women, and therefore wounded by the force of the masculine that holds the key to power and strength. It's completely wrong. I was so mistaken, and I was so fragmented because of that, and I was inauthentic because of that belief. I was masculine, but not the divine masculine, within the divine feminine. Because the divine masculine contains the vulnerable, the sensitive as well. And I was cut off from the strength of the divine feminine, like the fierce aspect of the Hindu goddess Kali. Cut off. And it's taken years to embrace the divine feminine within the divine masculine. The divine masculine was within the divine feminine, and the feminine is within the divine masculine. This is the divinity. It is the oneness of the sacred marriage of the two, the intertwining of both that dissolves the binary, the very duality that strangles our birthright to true divinity. Needless to say, as the masculine-feminine fusion in my life flourished, so did my relationships with women. I began to really honor women and see them not as sex objects, but as God's magnificent creations, as we all are. I became less of a stud and more of a student. I learned that as inner conflict of the distorted masculine and feminine self began to heal and appreciate one another, my inner peace grew. My calmness has come from the fusion of self. And this is why I believe that through the transition and transformation of us all into oneness, sustainable peace is possible. We as a community, each and every one of us, needs to embrace alignment of the divine feminine and the divine masculine, the sacred androgyne. Women's sensitivity is supported by the fierceness and strength of that femininity, and men's power is balanced by humble submission of service to the divine feminine within and without. Let us manifest this alignment among persons, gay and straight, butch and femme, transgendered, this alignment of our psyches and soul within the power of personhood. Meditate, pray, take action, face the fear, live in the light of love, and help another to find the light by being radiant in the spirit of the sacred marriage. So that ultimately there is no divine feminine and there is no divine masculine. There simply is divinity. The power and the passion of the highest source and the force, oneness. And so I ask, how will you find your way in? Will it be through the back door? How will you find your power and your compassion? And I'm not talking about the neurotic, patriarchal power, not the power, the example of power, but the power of example. Not the sentimental compassion, but the compassion that serves you to action. I invite you to explore the innermost recesses of your soul and the outermost regions of your integrity, to inquire about your beliefs, about your feminine and your masculine selves. Are they friendly? Are they dating? Are they friends with benefits? Is there a sacred marriage in your soul? Through the law of oneness, find internal sustainable peace and fuse that with the oneness of God and augment sustainable world peace. We have the power to choose, to supplicate, to surrender, and gain potency by giving our love, our humanity, our foibles, by giving it all to God. Become one with God, with every cell, with every thought, with every wrinkle earned, and every dream entertained, with every failure endured. Give God every level and expanse of yourself. Be one with God. You will manifest abundantly. Be safe in the law of oneness. Be peaceful in the most habitable world of oneness. And so it is.